All right, our speaker today on the St. Patrick's Day is somebody from that part of the world. It's Reverend Jan Limberg Morgan. Come on up, Jan.
Okay. First, before I start my talk, I love these musicians. They have been in my life so long. I love them, I love them, I love them. The first thing Karen said to me is, I hope the music is right today. I could not have asked for a better song than Imagine. I really could go and sit down because they just gave my talk. I won't. Okay, now let's get down to business. The theme for the month is shadow. I didn't get to listen to Rita on the 3rd because I was entertaining out-of-town company, a friend of 64 years. Now I understand there's a lot of people in here that haven't even lived that long, but our husbands were stationed together in the military. They're gone, we're still here. And I didn't get to listen to Rita. So was I the only person in the room that didn't have a clue what was going on last Sunday when Reverend Brian talked? Does anyone remember the recording? I was clueless. I'm like, what is going on here? Finally, I went back and listened to Rita, and I realized she got it, but I didn't. I had a whole different idea. So that's what you're getting today, is my different idea. Where there's shadow, there must be light. Years ago, I read a book, and I can't remember the name of the book, but I do remember the opening quote, and it was a Hindu quote. There are hundreds of paths up the mountain, all leading in the same direction, so it doesn't matter which one you take. The only one wasting time is the one who runs around and around the base of the mountain, telling everyone else they're wrong. You know, as a child, I grew up in the traditional church in Britain. And as a child, I remember singing, Jesus loves me, yes, I know, for the Bible tells me so. And then my child mind tried to reconcile this with onward Christian soldiers marching as to war. So I had a mental image of Jesus leaning down off a horse and patting me on the head as he rode off to the Crusades. The Crusades, by the way, were a series of medieval political and religious wars by order of the Pope to deter and correct those who were not following the papal dictates. Ostensibly, the object was to reach Jerusalem, but there was a lot of domination and looting happened on the way. As a young adult, I accepted another path up that mountain, but it clearly laid out the rules for admittance to heaven. There were the necessary monetary tithes to be paid, dietary restrictions, and a marriage approved and conducted by the powers that be. And when the love of my life died at age 47, I knew I needed to seek another path up that mountain, because that one wasn't going to work for me anymore. I've told you before about my first visit to the Salt Lake Science of Mind Church, of walking in and being physically embraced and affected by the energy in the room. And at the end of the service, I didn't want to get up and walk out. I wanted to just stay there. I knew I had come home. And home for me is centered in the New Thought movement. Now, it's important to remember that none of these paths are wrong. They're different. Some of them very, very different. Paraphrasing the quote on the hundreds of paths up the mountain, there are infinite variations on the colors of the rainbow. So it doesn't matter what color your skin is. You're part of the vast rainbow of humankind, fulfilling your place in creation's tapestry. For centuries, there's been a huge tide of opinion that the only correct skin color is white. And for centuries, people with other skin colors have been told they don't belong. So in the name of correct religion and correct skin color, countries have been invaded, spiritual traditions have been denounced, populations have been violated. A huge shadow cast over vast numbers of people. On Saturday, June 27th of 2015, Bree Newsom made history. She climbed a flagpole in front of the South Carolina Capitol building and took down the Confederate flag that was flying there. Bree was a young black woman, known for her courage in demonstrating against discrimination. Allies and friends had taught her how to climb a flagpole, and they were there to support her in the crowd. And anticipating the outcome, other allies and friends had brought bail money with them, as they knew she would be arrested and they would be there at her side. And as the police arrived to arrest her, they approached the flagpole with tasers. And a white man stepped forward, placed his hand on the flagpole, and stared into the eyes of the white policeman. He knew that his privilege would interrupt their plans and would keep Bree safe. When Bree made it safely down and handed the flag to the white man, whose name was James Tyson, police arrested both of them. Well, I researched it further because I was fascinated by this. I wanted to know what happened. They were released from jail within 6 hours. James Tyson said he had been arrested for demonstrating before, but he said he had never been approached by the guards at the prison and thanked so profusely. Most of them were black. They were so profuse in their thanks for the part he had played. On Thursday, July 9th, which was not quite 2 weeks since the flag had been torn down, and of course immediately put back up, the House of Representatives voted to remove the Confederate flag permanently from the state capitol. It was taken down on Friday, July 10th, and all charges were dropped against Bree Newsom and James Tyson. You know, it takes a kind of courage that maybe some of us may find we have it if we're put in that position. But to anticipate going out knowing what the result of one's actions were going to be, because one was so clear on what they stood for. Another shadow was cast worldwide in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic. People literally disappeared behind doors and masks. Many of us have been touched by the loss of loved ones and friends. Many of us. Communities, businesses, and families have been torn apart. But no matter our opinion about the truth behind it all, and that's up for a lot of conjecture, COVID cast a huge shadow over much of the world. You know, we're living in a time of social media, online business, and virtual communication. But at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, 2 Maryland high school students started delivering groceries and medications to their elderly family members and their elderly neighbors, those who, because of their compromised immunity, were not venturing out to take care of their business as usual. Dhruv Pai and Matt Casitano asked themselves, what are the elderly people doing who don't have relatives and friends to do this for them? How are they managing? And so they formed a group which they called Teens Helping Seniors. It was a free delivery service staffed by teen volunteers. And they would go get groceries, medications, whatever it was that these seniors who were not venturing out needed. The social media and the press spread the word. The idea caught on and requests came from all over. So they expanded the service to wherever there were willing teens. Maya Dinesh, let me see if I can say this, Niskayuna, New York. Am I saying that right? Does anyone know better? Anyway, from Niskayuna, New York, pondered how her recently deceased grandmother would have handled COVID, how she would have managed, because she wasn't close to Maya in a physical proximity. And so she recruited her friends, and together 80 teenagers formed another group and started their own local chapter. They helped the seniors with their social media so that they could stay in contact with their friends and families. Not just delivering groceries, but doing anything that would keep these people in touch with their normal world. And the bonds formed by the two generations still bring a lot of joy on each side. For me, Bree Newsom and James Tyson, the Teens Helping Seniors, they are the examples of the light. They looked the shadow in the eye and shone a blinding light into that. They refused to stay in the shadow. I'm going to address a much less dynamic but actually equally pervasive and equally debilitating aspect of the shadow. That is the unwillingness to draw attention to ourselves. Babies have absolutely no problem drawing attention to themselves. They can do everything from blow bubbles to kick and scream. They know who they are. But something, perhaps it's that other shadow, perhaps it's all those shadows put together, suppresses that willingness to step out. I know I grew up with, who do you think you are? Why do you think you should draw attention to yourself? Boy, you think you're something, don't you? When I used to sing. And that's not out there like skin color or religion, but it's just as pervasive, and it affects. We have no idea who it's affected. We don't know if it's affected the person sitting next to us, or our neighbors, or our school friends, or our work friends. You know, the propensity to be humble and self-effacing, the fear of letting our light shine. In that process, we run in the other direction. 22 years ago, I was offered the opportunity to earn a doctorate of religious studies. And along with the other requirements, I already had a master's in education, so I was ready to go. But along with the other requirements, I was asked to compile a resource manual for new ministers. I was the senior minister of the community church in Santa Maria, Pathways Community Church in Santa Maria, as Ronnie knows. And it made for a heavy schedule, but I loved it. I was in my element, researching, compiling, reading, teaching, writing. Reverend Dr. Scotty Dole of Barstow had taken me under her wing. She was a force of nature. She was a religious science minister in Barstow. But there were very few churches in Barstow where she had not guest spoken and where she had woven her New Thought principles into whatever the prevailing principles were of what the churches that she spoke at. She was very well known in Barstow. She had taken me under her wing, mentored me, contributed to my book, and cheered me on. And my colleagues and I don't know, including Dr. Frank Zamolin of Atascadero, graduated at the Anton Annual Conference. And around the dinner table afterwards, someone said to me, "How has earning your doctorate changed you?" And I replied, "Oh, it hasn't changed me. I'm still the same Jan." And Dr. Scotty said, "Dr. Jan, if everything you've accomplished in the last year hasn't changed you, why would we expect it to impact anyone else?" Gloop. And she continued, "You've walked the walk, you've done the work. You owe it to yourself and to others to wear your honor with pride." And someone else at the table said, "Check out Mary Ann Williamson." So I did. And this is what Mary Ann Williamson had to say about it. "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people don't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. You know, isn't it lovely to have friends? We've spent our lives seeking to make God, our parents, our friends, our children love us. Learning to love ourselves can be new. But what I've learned is that we must be shining lights for ourselves before we can be that for others. We must be purposely proactive about taking care of ourselves. Then it becomes natural to extend that caring outwards. But you cannot give from an empty well. If this well is not filled with love, with caring, with respect for oneself, with appreciation for oneself, how can we give it to someone else? How can we give it out there if we don't already have that? It's just lip service if we try and do it when this is not filled. Imagine how it would look if each one of us, not only in this room, or this community, or this country, but in the whole world, extended the bright light of our own divine being to eliminate that shadow and to light the way for each other. What if everyone allowed their light to shine out into the world? What if we all approached each other from a place of luminosity and compassion? Just as the song Imagine. If all the people living life in peace. If we were to do this, I feel deeply and strongly that the shadow would take a very small back seat to the light. Namaste.